Okay. Well, no, we'll just have, he's going to make a short statement. Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. Apologize for the delay. We do have a quorum. I want to welcome Councilmember Jose Rizar. Councilmember Weiss won't be joining us today. As you can tell, the acoustics are not the best. So if you need to have a conversation, please take it outside. The folks in the back that are speaking now, you can just please give us the courtesy so that folks can hear what we're saying, given the nature of the acoustics here. So appreciate your support and your cooperation. When you come to the microphone, give us your name and address. And if you can look to your right, you'll see a 2-minute clock. If you can get to your points within those 2 minutes, then we'll understand your point of view more clearly. Sometimes you write a very elegant letter, well-stated letter, and usually when they get towards the end is when you get cut off because you run out of time. So it's great to get to your point and then give us your feedback. Your letter will be part of the file. So again, we encourage you to use some time management in your presentation using those 2 minutes. And today we have item 4. Okay. Today we have an agenda that I'm glad to welcome one individual who will be looking for the Board of Building and Safety Commissioners. And I'd like to ask him to come on up, Mr. Victor Cuevas. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for your patience. Will this be the first time you serve on a commission for the City of Los Angeles?
Yes, it is my first commission.
Great. Well, welcome. And can you just give us a little bit about your background and your goals, what you'd like to bring to the table as a commissioner for building and safety?
Well, I grew up all my life in the city of Los Angeles, in the East Valley. I spent a couple years working in the public sector, in the state assembly, before going off to grad school in urban planning. Most recently, I've been doing project management. So I think I bring a unique experience where I have the background in public policy, but also the building industry. So I hope to kind of be a voice of the stakeholders, to have that balance.
Great, great. So you hail from the eastern part of the San Fernando Valley?
Lakeview Terrace.
Lakeview Terrace. And what kind of background in terms of your degrees or your credentials? Can you just speak to that?
Well, I went to UCLA, political science, about almost a decade ago. Most recently in June, I finished our coursework in urban planning at Cal Poly Pomona, where I did a lot of work in architecture, landscape architecture, and urban design. Great,
great. Well, I want to say thank you for supporting the city. The commissioner role is not always that easy, so be careful what you ask for. But I look forward to working with you in the future. Councilman Rizar, do you have any comments or observations, Mr. Cuevas?
Welcome, and thank you for your service. I've heard some very good things about you, and also helps that you went to UCLA where our chair went. That helps as well. But
and he went to Berkeley, so and UCLA as well.
So this is a very important job, as you know, and we appreciate your attentiveness to the seriousness of what comes before this commission, and a lot of great things have happened in the last few years in improving service delivery with the leadership of the general manager that we have there, and we look forward to continuing working with the commission to continue to improve things. So thank you for your service, and I understand that we have some common background as well from Mexico, so where we're from. So welcome. I just heard that on the way in here, so it's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, do you have any questions of us, Mr. Cuevas?
No, I'm looking forward to honor this to serve the city.
Well, fantastic. There's paperwork that has to be completed with the Ethics Commission, and once you submit that paperwork, we'll see you in front of the City Council.
Thank you.
And so our action will be to approve and support Mr. Cuevas for his appointment as Building and Safety Commissioner. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's give a round of applause. Thanks, fellas. Okay. Let's dispense with the items on the agenda that we can move on a little bit more quickly. Items number 1, seeing no card, we can refer to the planning department and request coordination with District 4. Item number 2, we do have a card on item number 2, so we'll have to hold on to that. Item number 4, I believe we have a comment from the council office on item number 4, otherwise we'll be referring it to the planning department. Please give us your name, sir, and who you represent.
Jim D'Antona, Planning Deputy for Councilmember Wendy Gruhl. Just a quick comment. We concur with the refer to staff. We just want on the record that any failure to continue on this progress of bringing this building back to its cultural status, we will be able to bring that back to Plum immediately and get the status going of revoking that Mills contract. So though we're taking it off to staff in the moment, at some point we want to make sure that we be able to bring that back if they fail to comply to continue with the renovation process satisfactory to the staff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. Thank you, sir. Item number 7, A and B, will continue in Plum July 22nd and should be before council August 5th. So that's items 7A and B. We do have cards on 8A and 8B as well. And 9 and 10, we don't see any special reports for today, so I'll thank the staff for their support there. So, let's see. We took care of 3. This did 4. Okay, Roberto, that I believe will take us to...
Item 2, Councilman. I believe you have a speaker's card. It's a motion, Labange Gruhl, instructing planning to rezone a portion of Cahuenga Boulevard.
Okay. So it's pretty straightforward, the directive, but we do have a card on this one. It's Michael Goodrich. Please give us your name and address.
Michael Goodrich, 3915 Long Ridge, Sherman Oaks.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. My wife Sherry and I purchased the properties located at 4635 and 4639 Cahuenga in July 1997. 4635 is a single-family residence. 4639 is a vacant lot. My wife and I oppose the proposed queue condition because it will severely impact the viability to develop the site for its intended use as a multi-unit housing building. I have spoke with my architect about designing a 30-foot structure, and he informs me that the costs go up significantly because of the impact of having to design the parking in a full subterranean structure. He also informs me that it becomes very difficult to design an attractive building with a 30-foot height limitation. The queue condition also requires that all drivers enter and exit onto Cahuenga. This provision seems to only affect my property. My experience is that the DOT prefers that driveways enter and exit off of boulevard streets. I believe they require this measure for traffic safety. I question the wisdom in applying such significant limitations on multi-unit sites. It seems as though not enough thought is taken into consideration about the quality of life issues for the future occupants of these buildings. When we purchased these properties, we had certain expectations as to what our building rights are. These queue conditions will change the rules of the game, with the only losers being current R3 property owners and future occupants of these properties. I believe a compromise could be struck and a height limitation of 35 feet and allowing the Department of Transportation to determine how cars will enter and exit these structures.
Well, thank you, sir, for your presentation. As we direct the planning department to coordinate this work with the district, I'm hoping all of these issues will be factored in.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was number 2. Okay. And along with number 2, we'd like to instruct the planning department to analyze whether there will be a loss of multifamily housing as a result of any rezoning efforts, and if there are any other parts of the community plan that can accommodate the RD2 and R3 zones. So that'll be going along with the initial directive on item number 2. So thank you, Roberto, on that. Okay, next item, Roberto.
That would be item 5A and 5B, Councilman. 5A is an appeal by Deborah Stevens, and she's appealing the action of the North Valley APC as it relates to approval of a conditional use for off-site sale of alcohol beverages. And 5B is a zone change related to this case, and this project is in CD2. And the planning department is present.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you? Good to see you. It's Tom Glick, City Planning Department, Valley Office. Good afternoon, planning commissioners, councilman. I'm here. I was the hearing officer on this case at 6971 North Sunland Boulevard. This is a market that is, and I'll be brief on this, it's literally going from one side of the street to the other. There was a vacant lot on the corner of the other side of the street. The applicant was luckily able to purchase it. It wasn't zoned consistent with what he wanted to do, so he asked for the zone change and also the ability to sell alcohol. The zone change is not in question here. It is the ability to sell alcohol. The concern from one of the neighbors, the actual appellant, was that the abandonment of the old store in favor of the new store would give somebody the right to come in under the conditional use on the other site. The applicant will address that they have agreed to keep their lease intact on the old site for a year to let that conditional use expire. That is one of the agreements they have made as a voluntary condition. But the appellant has appealed it for a concern out of a high crime area and other reasons that are certainly not part of the public record. The hearing officer or myself, when I did the review, it's a very relatively low crime area. There is not an overconcentration of existing alcohol permits, and the only concern really is the abandonment of the old market and the location of the new one, and I think that issue is being resolved by the applicant. But if you actually look at their current location in favor of where they're going, they're building a beautiful brand new store, 2-level. It's going to have that ranch look about them. I don't know if you have the report, but the community is wholeheartedly supported as is the council office. So the only issue here really is the conditional use. The variances, there were variances part of that. They were approved by Planning Commission and not appealed, so that's not a question here.
So that's for the sale of liquor. Okay. Anything else, Tom? Any questions for our staff?
If you have any questions, okay.
Okay.
There are some conditions that the applicant is going to ask to be amended. I'm going to ask for one because it was a mistake on my part. Administrative Condition 41 of my report states that the zone change, all the entitlements are only good for 2 years. In fact, they are good for 6 years, but the city attorney has recommended that we just strike the language out completely and let it stand on its own. In other words, it doesn't need to be in there. Condition 41.
So just omit the whole...
Exactly, just remove it.
Okay, that's fine.
The other ones, the applicant has submitted a letter, which I did not receive a copy of. That was an oversight by them, but I did not receive a copy requesting a change in one of the conditions as approved by a planning commission. But I didn't get enough time to review it. So I'm going to let them speak to it, and then if you have to bring me up. But it doesn't seem to what they have told me, based on what they've told me, I have a problem with it. I think it's okay.
At this time, but do take the time to look at the verbiage before we make a final statement.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Cases like these, when we have an officer from the police department, I try to get to them first, knowing that they could be taking care of business out on the field instead of in this room. So we do have, I believe, a Sergeant Luis Cabrera. If you'd like to come on up, sir, I'd like to ask you to speak first, so that way we don't keep you here all afternoon. And just speak to us in terms of your observations and the merits of the case.
Yes, good afternoon. The reason I'm here basically is some concerns that arose from this.
Only because we're taping you, can you give us your name?
Sure, Luis A. Cabrera.
Okay.
And I work at 12760 Osborne Street in Pacoima.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Mainly our concerns were pretty much explained by Mr. Glickman earlier. Initially they have two ABC locations at that intersection, And even though since 2000, we haven't cited anybody for any ABC violation in that immediate intersection, our concerns were if you increase to 3 ABC locations, which he explained to me there's only going to be 2, because initially he's going to move from one location to the other, when he builds this new liquor store market. Another thing that we're concerned with, adhering to the conditions set forth by the planning and assurance that there will be only the 2 locations at that intersection, and just make sure the upkeep with that, with the lighting, parking, because if you increase to 3 locations at that intersection, it's going to be a nuisance with traffic, noise, and so forth. Those are basically our concerns.
So the bottom line, even though there isn't a strong presence of crime reports, your concern is having more than 2 liquor licenses in one corner.
Yes.
And as a result of today's presentation from Mr. Glick, that will dissolve into one once the new store is completed.
That's correct.
Now, does that, I'm not sure if you know this, but does that mean that license will still be pertinent to the previous address, or does that disappear?
I believe they transfer it over.
They transferred
to the
over,
location.
so the existing site will no longer have the ability to sell liquor?
Exactly.
It'll be relegated to the new site.
Yes.
So you always will stay with one.
Right.
And if they are given that one license, what's your position there?
I have no objections to it, just as long as they adhere to their conditions.
Okay.
Good lighting at the location, ample parking, so that people wouldn't go into the neighborhoods to park and cause a nuisance,
Okay.
pretty much it.
Well, thank you, Sergeant. Thank you for your hard work and for everything you do for the city.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so let's have the appellants come on up. And who are the appellants here, Roberto?
The appellants, Councilman, are Deborah Stevens. Actually, is one appellant, Ms. Stevens.
Deborah Stevens. Ms. Stevens, like to come on up? Give us your name and address and the nature of your appeal.
Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Stevens, and I live at 9975 Wheatland Avenue in Shadow Hills. Before I start, could I respond to what was just talked about?
Yes.
About that location, and they're saying that they're going to try to guarantee that they're going to keep their lease for a year so that until they move across the street. But they're just a tenant, and there's really, in my opinion, no guarantee to that really happening. And because of if the landlord was to do something or whatever, and I don't know exactly what the agreement is, but all I know is that the liquor store at that location is very extremely lucrative, and I really would think that the owner would not want to lose that. And apparently the only way that it's lost is if this year thing happens. But this is all speculation, and if this doesn't happen, we're going to end up with 3 liquor stores on 3 of the 4 corners in that neighborhood.
See, and I think the notion of what the state licensing agency that oversees these liquor licenses should have a say as to what are the real conditions of these transactions.
Well, what happens is there's 2 liquor licenses. I mean, there's the CUB, which is the beverage license for the site itself. Then there's a separate ABC liquor license that the owner carries to whichever site that he goes to that's allowable to have the liquor sales. But the problem is that over there, where the existing site is now, that already retains the right to sell alcohol. So somebody could just come in, potentially, if this situation didn't happen, and they could go in there and just bring their liquor license. And because the city of LA, it's everybody's usually pretty much not favorable to new liquor stores.
Right.
It's very, I'm sure that there'd be a lucrative thing in that.
You could continue. We'll ignore the clock. As the
Okay.
appellant, I want to make sure you have the time you feel you need. So are there any other comments or observations you want to make on the appeal?
Yeah, can I read my little thing that I prepared?
How much time more would you need?
Well, I want...
It's not 20 pages, right?
Just because they brought up the issue of the site, and I thought that was important to be discussed, because also the Neighborhood Council at the North Valley Area Planning Commission also issued a
As long as you promise me it's not 5 pages, go ahead.
Oh, no, okay.
All right.
I've currently been a resident of Shadow Hills for approximately 30 years, and I live on Wheatland Avenue, which is the street that borders the proposed project and is a collector street to the neighborhood off of Sunland Boulevard. I did oppose the zone change for this site, and as a resident of Shadow Hills, I'm requesting that you deny the applicant's request for the conditional use for the off-site sale of a full line of alcoholic beverages. In light of the findings that need to be evaluated, it's my opinion that it should not be approved. As I said, there are currently 2 existing liquor stores with markets on 2 of the 3 developed corners. I feel it represents an undue concentration of liquor stores near the site. Adjacent to the parcel in question is equestrian-zoned residential neighborhood with children, animals, and adults who walk up and down Wheatland Avenue. There is a public grade school nearby in the neighborhood, along with various churches. Approximately 2 miles or less from this parcel are other liquor stores, grocery stores, and restaurants where alcohol can be obtained that are in more appropriate commercial locations. In lieu of these facts, I do not feel that this project would be considered a necessity for public convenience. How many liquor stores does one neighborhood need? It is my opinion that they do not contribute to the well-being of the neighborhood. I believe that they can bring detrimental effects that adversely affect the neighborhood's atmosphere. I feel that potential detrimental effects can occur in terms of various nuisances, increases in crime, safety issues, and traffic issues. I feel that a traffic study would be necessary for this site. The traffic flow onto Wheatland to enter the proposed project seems to me to be a logistical problem, since the existing liquor store has a lot of in and out traffic flow, and a lot of those cars back out from the existing liquor store onto Wheatland. Residents who pass through that area to reach Sunland Boulevard, as well as those who turn left onto Wheatland from Sunland to get into the neighborhood would, in my opinion, be negatively impacted from this proposed project. Unfortunately, that corner, I think, would be the worst corner compared to where it is now as far as the traffic flow for the neighborhood.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Stevens.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. So I believe that takes care of all the appellants. Mr. Thresh, we have several cards on this. Would you like to speak last? Okay. We also have Jim D'Antona on this one as well, right? So let's go through these cards. We have A. Kalagnomos, I apologize, Alex, Patrick Laurie, Peter Elias, and Electra Kruger. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Alex Kalagnomos, 9629 Sunland Boulevard. I just am here to find out how the liquor store, if it happens, I don't know if this is the right place to ask, but how it'll affect the prices of homes in the neighborhood.
You're asking us how it will affect the price of homes?
And generally, also Deborah. So I don't know if this is the right time to ask, but that's what representing several homeowners in the neighborhood who are very concerned about the proposed liquor store. So
I can only give you a very general statement. Improvements affect property, but the uses also affect the property, and I can only give you a general response, not knowing the specifics of the market of that area. So it's a hard question to answer on this specific address.
I know.
Anything else you'd like to add or ask?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Patrick Laurie?
Hi, yes. I live right next door to the opposed dirt lot, and I'm not too familiar with what's going on here, but with the off-sale side of alcohol, I disagree with any kind of alcohol being delivered anywhere. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me to deliver alcohol to a house if you can't go and pick it up yourself. You're just not ready for it, okay? And about the additional 5 feet, I have a nice view of the mountains, and I would like to keep it that way, where I guess he wants to raise it up another 5 feet to 30 feet, but I would like to keep my view of the mountains. And about I see there's 22 parking stalls, and with these office buildings and with the other people that are going to be parking there, I just don't see how 22 stalls with the handicap stalls and all that, I cannot see how that's going to fit with a market, office buildings. I just can't see where the parking's going to come from. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Peter Elias, and then Electra Kruger.
Good afternoon. Peter Elias, 14549 Archwood Street in Van Nuys. I'm here
Good
representing
afternoon,
the
sir.
applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Hirani. This location is a vacant site. Mr. and Mrs. Hirani own and operate Furman's Market. Furman's Market is an institution in this neighborhood. Everybody recognizes it. They refer to it as the general store. It's been there for more than 30 years. He simply is trying to build, he's a tenant now in the existing facility, has about 3,000 square feet. It's not very well maintained, landlord issues. Only has one parking space available to the community in which they have to back out onto the street to utilize. He's purchased the piece across the street. We've had numerous meetings and inputs, have hundreds of letters of support, adjacent property owners within the 500 feet and within the community, and a letter of support from the Neighborhood Council, Foothill Trails Neighborhood Council, which is monumental unto itself. I'm going to hand these out so that you can see the type of building that's being proposed here. This is a top-of-the-line facility. It's accommodated all the equine facilities and usage, has a horse trail, split rail fence. They'll modify the crosswalks to accommodate the equines, also a modification of the bus stop so that there's no interference.
Let me ask you one question. You make
Sure.
reference to community meetings, but here we have a neighbor next door who has asserted that they weren't aware of what was going on, and
I'm completely surprised, to be honest with you. This is the first we've heard of it. I've never met the individual. I'm not sure exactly where he lives. He's concerned about the delivery of alcohol. There's no delivery of alcohol. This is a grocery store. This is where you go. You purchase your sundries, your groceries, whatever else you want, including if you want beer or wine or alcohol, you can purchase that. The same thing that is ongoing today. No changes in the venue at all. Just its own personal market location. 22 parking spaces, approved by the Department of Transportation. It's consistent with the community plan, et cetera, et cetera. There's been some concern about, is there going to be more than 2 facilities at this set of intersections? The answer is no. The alcohol license belongs to the individual as issued by the state. He takes that with him. The site does not have a conditional use permit. It would fall into what you would call a deemed to be approved conditional use category. So anybody that would want to occupy that would have to go back to the city. He is going to hold his lease voluntarily, and he has a month-to-month option and allow a 1-year period to expire, so it'll be empty, so that there will be no additional market there. The likeliness of that taking place anyhow is very, very slim. It would require an individual to step in at the right time, make an application to the state, and obtain a license, and then go into competition with 2 existing markets and liquor stores that have been there for 30 years. The likeliness of that taking place is very, very small. But he has agreed to do that. It's in his best interest as well.
okay.
Okay? Mm-hmm.
So, bottom line, no delivery of liquor,
No.
and the liquor license goes with the tenant.
The liquor license belongs to him, the applicant. It's his
So
state
it'll
license.
follow
It takes-
him, and there won't be a property left behind that can adopt a
That is
license.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct. There are a couple of issues that, within the body of the grant, the recommending grant by the commission, that I'd like to see if you would entertain. I had written you a letter, and apparently you had not gotten it. I apologize for that. But one of the conditions, number 21, ties the grant to the owner of the land, and the grant should run with the land. And I'm asking that you eliminate that. That it asks that if there, for whatever reason, it's C3, page C3, 21, condition 21, and what it says is that if the facility is sold, that the applicant shall file a plan approval. And the problem I have with that is if you were to purchase the property and run the facility and you're making no changes, the scrutiny is only to the individual, and that's not the intent. There is a 1-year plan approval requirement, okay, for checking the operations, and any owner that would make any changes to any facility would have to file a plan approval, and that is appropriate. So I'd ask that you consider removing that condition.
We'll consider, but I also want to hear from the staff and from the council office as to the recommendation you're making before we make a decision.
Okay, that's
Okay.
fine, no problem. Okay.
Anything else?
Is there any questions? Is there any other issues
No.
that you'd like me to
Yeah,
address?
okay.
Height. I just heard somebody say height. I want you to understand that during the course of our interaction with the neighborhood, as well as the neighborhood council, they elected to have the pitched roof, as you can see in the design. That's the 5-foot in additional height. So it was a 25-foot building. They thought it was architecturally more pleasing to have a pitched roof. We kind of agreed with them. Hence, we went to 30 feet.
Okay.
It's actually 28, but in our request, we're asking for 30 feet. That's how it
Okay.
got there.
So it's 28, okay.
Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Electra Kruger.
Yes, my name is Electra Kruger, and I'm the current president of the Shadow Hills Property Owners Association. We do fully support the transfer of the Furman store site as proposed, as well as its continued sale of alcoholic beverages. While Furman's has historically and will continue to serve as a neighborhood convenience market, it must be understood that his business has always been and is anticipated to continue to be primarily that of a liquor store, selling primarily quality wines. It is these liquor sales upon which his survival as a businessman depends. This brings me to the restrictions noted in Condition 17 of the off-site alcohol beverage sales condition use, which states that gross sales of alcoholic beverages are not to exceed that of gross sales of food items. Firstly, as a convenience store, not all non-alcoholic items available for sale are food items. He carries dish soap, he carries cigarettes, he carries stationery, he carries paper items. All items that serve a neighborhood need but would fail to contribute to his benefit per Condition 17. Secondly, it must be understood that the cost of a can of tuna does not match that of a bottle of fine wine. So Sam Horney cannot control the items that a customer chooses to purchase when they come into a store. So at the very least, I would like to request a revisit of Condition number 17 to read that an equivalent number of non-alcoholic items, whether it be they are food or non-food, be required to be on display and available for purchase as are alcoholic items, but this irrespective of the cost of either. In the best case scenario would be the removal of Condition 17 entirely. It is a restriction the Old Furman store has not had to face, and I did consult with our senior lead officer. There are no undue crime stats for the corner of Sunland and Wheatland, and certainly not because of any sale of liquor.
Thank you, Ms. Kruger. Thank you very much. Okay, we have Dale Thirst and Jim D'Antona. I guess you guys are doing a tag team? Same office?
Dale Thrush for Councilmember Wendy Gruhl. Mr. D'Antona has gone back to the office, but I believe before I speak, Mr. Glick has some clarifying comments that might benefit your deliberation.
Okay. Mr. Glick?
Yes, two clarifications on the issue of height. Height was granted through a zoning administrative adjustment, as well as through the project permit compliance for the specific plan in the area, neither of which was appealed. Planning Commission in those cases is the final decision maker if not appealed. So those issues are not at question here. The only question is the condition use. I'm not telling you that you can't look at height. I'm just telling you that height wasn't appealed as part of the normal appeal process.
No harm, no foul. That's okay.
Okay. And then the appellant has just approached me and said that she would be very happy if a voluntary condition, as the applicant has proposed, to agree to hold the current location under a lease for a year, let that conditional use expire. As long as they volunteer to that, she would be very happy with that as a settlement for the issue. She just does not want an over-concentration on the corners of this location with alcohol. I can't disagree with her on that, but I think the applicant is doing everything they can to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glick. Mr. Thrush.
Good afternoon, Chairman Reyes, Councilman Weezar. My name is Dale Thrush. I am Planning Deputy for Councilmember Wendy Gruhl. I think what you've just heard from Mr. Glick was an offer by the appellant to compromise her appeal in exchange for a volunteered condition. We would certainly support that resolution, and if you have any questions of the council office, I'd be happy to answer.
So the action we will take is based on these recommendations and observations that we deny the appeal and deny the appeal on 5A and approve on 5B. That be accurate?
I believe you have to grant the appeal in part in order to change or to add the volunteered condition.
Madam Attorney?
And I think in this case, you can approve the zone change, which is 5B.
Right. Yes, Jerry Burge, City Attorney's Office. You need to act on the appeal, 5A, which would be to grant in part and deny in part, add the volunteered condition related to the lease, delete conditions 41 and 21 based on recommendation of Planning Department and request of the applicant that the City Attorney agrees with his comment regarding condition 21. And then as to 5B, approve the zone change.
Exactly.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. So that'll be the action of this committee?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. So that's 5A and B. Thank you very much. And our next item, Roberto?
That would be item 6, Councilman. It's an appeal by Daniel Wright. He represents the Mount Washington Homeowners Alliance, and it's a sequel appeal relative to the adoption of an MND for the proposed construction of a 7 single-family dwelling project in CD 14.
Okay, can we have the staff come forward, please?
Dave Gay, City Planning. This is a project that was approved by the East LA Area Planning Commission, and what's before you is some concerns over the environmental clearance, the M&D on the project, and I'll let Mr. Wright speak to his specific concerns, but generally they enter into 3 categories. One has to do with the grading in the walls, and I understand building and safety can address that specifically. The other has to do with noise, and we're glad to talk about that, and this has to do with noise during construction and the level of significance of that noise, and aesthetics, which we think were mitigated in the MND. So I'll let Mr. Wright present his appeal and then answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for our staff, Councilmember? Okay. So we'll listen to the appellant. Please give us your name.
I guess I'd suggest that we hear from Building and Safety first before I give my remarks, if that's possible.
That's fine. Welcome back.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Dana Prevost with Building and Safety. As you recall, the issue with regard to the grading had to do with how 2 existing retaining walls that were previously constructed, I believe back in the 90s, how those walls were going to be underpinned with new footings. Originally, they were not constructed with the proper footings, and there were no inspections and so on. So the issue is how to bring those walls into conformance with the code. Previously, the Department of Building Safety reviewed a geotechnical report, and we approved that report back in January of 2006. The report provided general guidelines on how to design the footings and provided some options, but did not give anything specific. Subsequently, the structural engineer for the project provided a detail in a report that he wanted to put a 4-foot deep lateral key underneath the footing, and that was the cause of the concern that this 4-foot deep concrete key would not be deep enough into the bedrock to provide the stability that is necessary for the wall. That's where we left off at the last committee hearing. Subsequent to that, we've had conversations with the developer and also with the structural engineer. And currently, the proposal by the structural engineer is to underpin this wall with piles that will be a minimum of 12 feet deep. These will extend into the bedrock. We've taken a look at that. We don't have detailed construction plans at this point. It's kind of premature for that still, but he's given us a construction detail on how that would be constructed. We've looked at it. We find it acceptable. It looks appropriate. We've shared this with Mr. Wright, and based on the comments I received from him, I'm sure he'll speak to that, but I believe he also finds it acceptable. So that, at this time, that's where we're at. We think we have what will be a good approach to underpin the upper retaining wall. And just to remind you, there's two retaining walls. The lower retaining wall is going to be demolished, and the reason is they have, because of zoning setback requirements for the buildings, they had to move the buildings further into the slope. So they're going to demolish that lower wall and build a brand new one to replace the lower wall. And it's this upper wall that's a little bit further up the slope that we're talking about with how to underpin that wall to support it. So that's where we're at. And we are going to be requiring that once we have the detailed construction plans, that we get an updated soil report to make sure that, and to have the soil engineer review the plans and also give us specific recommendations on depths, just to get this sort of iron out the details, if you will. So that will be forthcoming. And one last thing I'd like to add, in terms of the MND, I would like to recommend to amend a mitigation measure, 6C2, and to that measure append the following verbiage. In accordance with Section 91.7016.4.2 of the Los Angeles Municipal Code, said report shall demonstrate that development of the site will achieve a minimum factor of safety of 1.5. The development shall in all other respects comply with Division 70 of the Los Angeles Municipal Code.
Okay, thank you, sir. And you have this letter dated July 14th that also states your observations, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so can I ask a question? So you are okay with underpinning of the upper wall with piles that will be a minimum of 12 feet deep, correct? That's what you're recommending in this letter that you prepared for Plum.
And that's correct. And that's a minimum of 12 feet. It's possible to.
And that the lower retaining wall will be replaced with a new wall.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wright.
Good day, council members. Daniel Wright, 467 Crane Boulevard, Los Angeles 90065, on behalf of the Mount Washington Homeowners Alliance. We filed this appeal out of concern that the project was not supported with an adequate environmental document, and as a result, the project was not appropriately mitigated. Our concerns focused on a number of items which, if resolved, we would not further appeal this case. Those items included that the retaining walls lacked a sufficient construction methodology to assure safety on this geologically troubled site. Two, that there was a lack or a need for further aesthetic variety among the steps, garages, and driveways of the proposed 7 houses. And three, that there is a lack of noise mitigation measures because each of these projects was considered and approved as individual house approvals without taking into consideration the cumulative noise impact of simultaneous construction, particularly during the framing phase directly across the street from people's houses. We're gratified that in these series of hearings, Councilmember Huizar and Reyes have shared our concerns that the geology report and the approval letter of the city failed to absolutely assure that the existing retaining walls would be torn down or rebuilt safely or retrofitted in place using the safest construction methods to assure that the site with its documented adverse bedding planes will not slide down onto these new homes or take the uphill backyards and houses down the hill as well. And we also thank the developer, Mr. Irwunzi, for his working with the Building and Safety Department to design a concrete pile retrofit plan for the upper retaining wall. Had the EIR or MND prepared by planning covered these issues, we might not have had to have come this far. And so we're gratified that we have some kind of resolution. Our engineering and architects have reviewed the newly developed construction plans, and we endorse these plans and ask that you include them as an express condition of this project approval. In other words, that you attach to the project approval these plans prepared by John Hamilton and make it the approved methodology for the retaining walls. I want to address the two other minor issues.
Continue.
Let me address the other concerns that Councilmember Weezer shared with us at the prior hearings. First, that the plans that we have seen in those plans, the driveway steps and the driveway designs at the street level are identical or mirror images of each other. While there is architectural variety on the upper portions of these 7 houses at the street level, the public will have perceived the houses as part of a tract unless there's a little bit more done aesthetically to create that variety that is a fundamental goal of the Mount Washington specific plan. So we had submitted previously to your committee proposed additional project condition that would require that the developer come back and propose some type of variety of paving materials, maybe a different placement of landscaping beds, or differing looks and designs of the front steps. These changes are minor. They will cost the developer probably next to nothing to implement, and yet they will go a long way in assuring that the goal of the Mount Washington specific plan of architectural variety is met. Finally, there's the issue of construction noise and dust impacts that will follow from the simultaneous construction of 7 houses in a row directly across the street from elderly and asthma sufferers who live in the neighborhood. We offered a proposed condition to you previously to require the phasing of the framing and siding activities. Simultaneous use of multiple pieces of noisy equipment or the lack of extraordinary dust control on this site will send these seniors into misery. While we're open to other measures that building and safety might suggest to you today, if there is an unwillingness to require a phasing of framing and exterior construction, we do think that you should add some appropriate measures on noise and dust. One of the problems of this M&D is all it discloses is how much soil will be scooped out if you were building on virgin soil. And that's not what we have here. We have a hillside that was significantly, completely graded and torn up in the 1990s. And so there is a tremendous amount of uncompacted soil, loose soil lying all over this hillside. In order to create these 7 pads, it's going to require digging way down to reach the bedrock and then compacting up to wherever the pads need to be. And all this is happening right across the street from these folks' homes. And so, I would certainly be open to some type of suggestion or plan that building and safety might be able to offer on this. We offered these conditions in the hope of protecting the neighborhood. This isn't, most of the construction that happens in our community is 1 house at a time, as you well know. This is like a large tract. And so that's why we're asking for these additional protections for the community, because the MND did not address these things adequately. For these reasons, we urge our appeal be granted and that these additional project conditions be imposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Okay, our last speaker is Godwin Iwunze. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Godwin Iwunze. I don't think we've heard a lot from Daniel, Mr. Daniel Wright, on this project, and we've done a lot of correction. This has been going on for 3 years, and I'm making a mortgage payment of $22,000 every month on 7 houses. All his complaints has been addressed, and we are following the instruction of building and safety. This site will be safeguarded. There's nothing we can do when we start building and we get dust and we get noise. It's part of the collateral damage when you build a house in a place like that. This is sad that he keeps bringing up the same old topic. The structures that we're building there, they are not the same. Each house is individually unique. It has been checked. It has been reviewed by planning. I think we should move forward with corrective measures put down by building and safety.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Windsor. Councilmember.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And this is an item that's come before Plum a number of times, and each time we've asked for additional information, which I want to thank the Building and Safety Department and Planning Department for going back and really putting a lot of time and effort into this. A primary concern to me at the time was whether we were looking or did we have a plan that was safe enough for these hill sites, the retaining walls, so that we could ensure the safety of the local residents. After much conversation, it seems that we have something that would satisfy my concerns and perhaps the concerns of the appellant. And so there are other issues that were raised. I don't think they raised to the level of granting the appeal on those issues. So at this time, after much review, I request that we deny the appeal, but grant in part insofar that we adopt the language as stated in the Building and Safety letter dated today to the Planning and Land Use Management Committee, which request that there be an underpinning of the upper wall with piles that will be a minimum of 12 feet deep, and that the lower retaining wall will be replaced with a new wall as outlined in Mr. Hamilton's drawings. Is that correct, City Attorney? Is that the correct way to go
Jerry
about it?
Burge, City Attorney's Office, yes, but we would also recommend that you add the mitigation measure 6C2 as recommended by the Department of Building and Safety.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Is that not what you said?
Yes.
That's you said the same thing.
Okay.
All right. So we're on the same page. I'll second that, and we'll move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that takes care of that item. Our next item, Roberto?
Yes, Councilman, it's item 8A and 8B. 8A is an appeal, actually 3 appeals. One is by the applicant. He's appealing the denial of the super graphic sign. Appeal number 2 is by Doug Haynes from the La Mirada Avenue Neighborhood Association as it relates to various land use entitlements. Item 3 is an appeal by Robert Blue, and he's appealing also various land use entitlements. And item 8B is the related zone change, high district change, and general plan amendment.
So the 3 appeals are for both 8A and 8B, or just 8A?
8A, Councilman. B is the zone change and the high district change.
Okay, so I want to make sure. All right.
Good afternoon, council members. Madhu Kumar, Planning Department.
Good afternoon, Madhu.
This case went to commission on 2 occasions, in January and also in March. What I'm going to tell you is the commission actions which were taken. There were plenty of those, so I'm just going to highlight. The project involved plan amendment, zone change, several variances, adjustments, and conditional use. The project is a 305-unit mixed-use project with 40,000 square foot of office space. And of those 305 units, 60 units will be for workforce housing, of which 120% will be, 30 units will be 120% of the median income, and another 30 will be 150%. Now, this is the kind of project which we call smart growth. It's in the right area. It's a transit-oriented project close to 2 metro red line stations. There's a dash bus right in front. And the project is proposed, at commission anyway, as a gold LEED building. So those were just the highlights of what the commission approved. Just touching upon the variances. When you have a project of this complexity, the zoning code cannot possibly address projects of different sizes. Many of these variances were required because of the technical complexities of the code. So instead of looking or counting the number of variances, we should be looking at the end product. A building which is providing much-needed housing and office space, and also a 21,000 square foot public park in an area which is highly deficient in public parks and office spaces. Now, talking about the signage, it's also located in the Hollywood Sign District, which allows 2 super graphic signs by right, as long as they're on opposite sides of the building and cannot be viewed in one direction. So what we had in front of us was a sign, about a 1,900 square foot sign on the east side of the building. Now this building is, picture it's facing the south side of Sunset Boulevard. The applicant requested a sign on the south side of the building, which was about 1,205 square feet, facing Sunset. Now, it's not on the opposite side, so that's the reason the commission denied the sign and instead allowed the sign to be on the westerly side. So now they're on opposite sides. Also, there's another condition in the sign district, which is if there is a super graphic sign on that face of the building, you cannot have other signage there. Now, we also have all retail spaces on the ground floor, which will be facing Sunset Boulevard. So these were the 2 reasons why the commission denied the sign on the south side.
Now, the nature of the signs, is there any technology involved in terms of, are they lit, are they digital, or are they animated? I mean, can you describe the nature of the signs? Or is it more like that wrap you see around buses where you can see the sign, and the folks inside can see out? I mean, I just want to understand what's the nature of the sign.
It is a lit sign, and I don't know for sure whether there'll be images changing every few seconds. If it's animated, I'll leave the applicant to elaborate on that. But yes, it's a lit sign.
Okay.
Any other questions on the variances? Or?
No, that's, okay. So you have 3, okay, go ahead. That's it?
That's it. Okay. And unless you want me to get into the details of this many actions, yes, so I'll come back if you need me.
It's like 24 actions, you said?
Pardon me?
How many actions do we have in total?
About 17.
17.
I think.
Okay. Okay. Let's hear from anyone else from the staff, from planning that would speak, or no? Okay. I believe the council deputy of the district wanted to speak after the staff presentation.
I believe there's staff in the CRA that may want to
After the
speak.
appellants. Okay, so let's hear from the appellants first, and then we'll hear from the council.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So, the appellants on this case, come on up.
Right. There are 2 appeals. I'm representing 2 of the appellants, La Mirada and Bob Blue, and then the applicant himself has also filed an appeal regarding
the signage.
The signage.
Right.
So I'm here for 2.
2, okay, fine.
Okay. I'm Daniel Wright on behalf of the La Mirada Neighborhood Association of Hollywood and Bob Blue. These appellants have appealed the entire decision of the City Planning Commission to approve 9 variances and 2 zoning administrator adjustments, a conditional use permit for an unspecified seller of alcohol, a site plan review, and a project permit compliance to allow super graphic signs on a skyscraper. Let the record reflect that the detailed analysis of why the variances, adjustments, and conditions and use permit findings simply cannot be made are set forth in the appeal documents previously filed. Additionally, the detailed comments of John Perica, a former zoning administrator of the city with 20 years of experience, has also been submitted for the record. The Sunset Gordon project is the poster child of why so many residents are fed up with business as usual at City Hall. Planning Director Gail Goldberg says that the city must stop granting incentives for developers to value land in the city and what the developer thinks the zoning can be changed to instead of what the zoning is. As Mr. Perica observed in his analysis, with the request of 17 different discretionary entitlements and a need for the city to make almost 90 affirmative findings, the project represents a massive disregard of the city's zoning. Mr. Parika summarized this issue more in blunt terms. He essentially said, why not create a no zoning at all zone and just make it, let's make a deal. There is simply no factual basis for this wholesale abandonment of the city's general plan and zoning code. Let's address parking. The applicant's attorney has attempted to mislead the council by citing that the municipal code parking requirements instead of the well-established Deputy Advisory Agency policy of 2.5 parking spaces per condominium. He argues that such a policy is not appropriate in an urban area with transit access. The EIR states that the Red Line Rapid Transit Portal is 3/4 of a mile away from this project. The city's policy is to designate a project as transit-oriented when it is within walking distance of 1,500 feet or less. The EIR establishes that this project is 3,960 feet from the subway, or 3/4 of a mile. So you have no factual basis for transit orientation based upon subway. The bus lines nearby do not help either. Line 2 is a local bus line and crawls along Sunset with all the other traffic. Only all day and every day high capacity express bus service justifies consideration of the transit-oriented designation. Line 302 is a one-way rush hour line, so it does not qualify. Dash service may currently pass this location, but it is not rapid transit, has limited hours, and is far more subject to cancellation than these other transit things that we've talked about. Therefore, there is no bus service to this location that justifies this huge parking reduction. The project does not meet any of the transit-oriented standard, yet the project is proposed to receive huge transit credits against the normal parking requirements. The city has no factual basis in this record to grant these. For instance, restaurants and retail stores in Hollywood already have a reduction of required spaces compared to other areas of the city, yet the city is proposing to reduce the required parking below even the Hollywood's very generous changes. For instance, restaurants in Hollywood, the city requires only 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet, where typically in the rest of the city it requires 10 spaces per 1,000 square feet. For retail in Hollywood, the city requires only 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet, but typically throughout the rest of the city requires 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So it's absolutely unjustified to reduce the commercial parking below these already generous levels, but that's what the developer wants. And this is dramatically demonstrated in the developer's parking analysis, which shows that the 5,000 square foot retail area will have 2 staff parking spaces, and that the 8,000 square foot restaurant will have 1 staff parking space. So after the chef of the restaurant takes the 1 parking space allocated to the restaurant staff, where do the rest of them park? Does this city council really think that everyone who works in these commercial spaces will carpool at unprecedented rates or walk a 3/4 of a mile from the subway? The factual record clearly demonstrates there is no reasonable basis for reductions below the existing discounted codes. These variances are requested using the buzzword of smart growth, but it'll merely be a recipe for dumb and dumber gridlock of the streets around the Sunset Gordon. Let's talk about averaging. There has been a request for a variance to permit floor area and density averaging across the varying zones underlying the project. Such averaging was specifically invalidated by a Los Angeles Superior Court in a comparable case of Anaya versus City of Los Angeles. The court granted a writ against this city for density averaging. The applicant's attorney has tried to distinguish the Anaya case on its facts regarding a buffer zone. There is no way to distinguish that case from Sunset Gordon. The Superior Court granted a writ to invalidate an effort to spread higher density from different lot zones. That's what the developer wants here. It will be invalidated again. Then there's the park on this project. The park is double counted as open space. Instead of paying the required Quimby fees to provide city parkland, the developer proposes to construct a public park on top of its parking structure, 2 stories high, and sell it to the CRA for $3.7 million, and then include the park that's been sold to the CRA as counted as its own open space. And then, because the park is not large enough, to seek a variance to provide 30,900 square feet of open space in lieu of the required 38,600 square feet. And then, of that 30,900 that they're willing to give you, Really, $21,571 is the park that's sold to the CRA for $3.7 million. So in reality, the park owned by the CRA cannot lawfully be counted as both the open space and the park provided in lieu of Quimby fees. When the park is deducted out, the applicant is seeking a 76% reduction of open space to just 8,429 square feet. The scheme is a total giveaway of private benefit to enhance the profits of the developer. While the CRA will own the park, the Homeowners Association will control it. Finally, in a final affront to common sense, the park will be north of the 23-story skyscraper and in the shadow of the building most of the day. It will be elevated above the street, and the public will not know that it is a public park that they are entitled to use unless you want to impose some types of programs to require it. There is no basis to grant any of the variances and discretionary entitlements requested with respect to the private park to be owned by the CRA and administered by the Homeowners Association. So this is a very troubled project. We've got huge parking concessions because the developer simply doesn't want to dig down another level to provide required parking. They say, oh dear, there's the water table is down there. Well, there are other buildings that you have approved that are below the water table that can be successfully built with appropriate sump pumping, and that's what you should require here rather than granting these massive wholesale ignoring of our fundamental zoning rules. Otherwise, why have a zoning code at all? For these reasons, we request that the appeal be granted and that you send this project back for the alternative that's identified in the EIR that's really viable. It's called, and they even identified it in the EIR this way, compliance with the city code alternative. Wow, wouldn't that be a concept? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Okay, now we do have two deputies, Allison Becker and Kelly Bernard, so I wasn't sure which one of the two wanted to come forward.
Councilman, actually, there's other appeals associated.
More appeals, okay, let's keep going with the appeals.
Council, my name is Craig Lawson, representing the applicant. We had an appeal on this case, too, on the issue of signage. Speaking today will be myself as well as Mike Woodward, the project attorney, who's going to address some of the issues that were raised here. I'm just going to say that I've been involved, as you know, in a number of projects. Many of them do require variances from the code, changes in the zone. Some of the best projects that we've seen in Los Angeles, several of which were built by the same applicant, have required variances. They're cutting-edge projects. The code has not caught up to them. In some cases, the code changes, as it has downtown, to actually catch up with the projects that have been approved. So it's important to keep that in mind as we move forward on this hearing. What I'm going to address today briefly is on signage, because our appeal, as was said by the staff, this case went to Planning Commission twice. The items were in general approved with conditions. The item that we requested on signage location was not approved, and we're asking for you to consider that today.
Can you be a little bit clear about what you mean by cutting edge?
Sure.
Can you articulate what that means?
Absolutely. This is a mixed-use project with a number of different elements, as well as a series of public benefits. We have 305 new housing units in a high-rise building on the corner of Sunset and Gordon. And can you bring me, Matt, one of the boards? With a creative office component. You've seen a lot of high-rises with retail or restaurant. This is high-rise residential with office, also including retail, on a site that had an existing restaurant called the Old Spaghetti Factory. I'll just put it right in front here.
So three different uses under one structure.
Right. With limitations. We're keeping the facade structure of the Old Spaghetti Factory, so we can't remove that entire structure. Therefore, the parking and other elements of the project need to be on an adjacent parcel, which is where we're going to build the underground parking and a civic park above that.
So to preserve the Spaghetti Factory's facade, the historic elements,
right,
you need these exemptions and these variances and all these other, in order to meet that objective.
Project's also in two zones. We have a commercial zone on the front. We have an R4 zone on the back.
Okay.
The R4 portion will be used for essentially the public park. So we're taking all of the density, moving it up to Sunset. The housing portion above the retail means that we'll have the high-rise building on the commercial portion. So it's a unique combination. It's one that we haven't seen before, but it's one that has been strongly supported. We had actually dozens of community meetings, and we have very strong support from everything ranged from the Hollywood Chamber to adjacent neighbors, adjacent business owners. As you'll hear, the council office, the mayor's office, the CRA, we have a lot of support for this project. I think part of it also has to do with the developer who has built in the South Park area 3 buildings, the 11 building, the Luma building, and the Evo building, which I think you've seen, that have brought over 700 units to the South Park area. Again, very interesting, very highly designed projects, but ones that did require variances. And in those cases, they didn't come here. Those were approved either in the advisory agency or at the Planning Commission. They were not appealed. So this is the first time that you're seeing this appellant here at the Plum Committee, but we think this is an excellent project for your review. This is just a depiction of the project itself with one of the signs that you can see there. And on the issue of signage, basically we have, there's no dispute that there are 2 supergraphic signs that are allowed as part of this project. The question is location. The Hollywood Signage District, the SUD, says that they have to be on opposite sides. And I think the context of that was a typical building that might be a linear building with frontage, let's say, on Sunset, but not on a corner. We have a corner building here. So it doesn't make sense in the case of this building, in our opinion, to put the signs on the west side and the east side, which is what the ordinance would require. We have a request to do it slightly differently. We would like to have it on the south side and the east side, again, so that the orientation is towards Sunset on the south-facing sign, and then going to the east would be away from the residential neighborhood. We have a parking lot immediately to the east at the moment. This signage concept was actually suggested by the Design Review Advisory Committee in Hollywood. They were the ones that brought this forward after 3 meetings with that group. And it was supported by the council office, it's been supported by the CRA. The Planning Commission felt that there might be too much sort of animated type signage along Sunset that already exists, and that adding to this might add to the visual clutter. We disagree. This is not an electronic sign, it's a static sign. It is lit up at night, but it doesn't change in terms of the messages. That was a question you had.
Yes, sir.
And so we're asking for what we believe to be a minor variation here, only relating to the sign location. Everything else we're in conformance with. We have a couple of very minor word changes on some Q conditions, which we have submitted to you, and we're willing to talk about that. But so in essence, we're asking you to grant the appeal on the signage location issue and to deny the appeals that were stated earlier by Mr. Blue and Mr. Haynes.
Okay.
I think Mike Woodward wanted to add a few words, if that's okay.
Okay, please. Have any questions of the gentleman? No? Okay. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, council members. Michael Woodward, 1999 Avenue of the Stars, 4th floor, DLA Piper, representing the applicant. I submitted a letter dated July 2nd, responding to the points raised in the appeal, including the Anaya case that the gentleman referred to. The Anaya case, and he included it in his appeal, was a trial court decision that talked about the effect of a city granting a variance which counteracted a buffer that had been established by a zone change. It's not the same issue here. As Craig explained, we have R4 zoning on part of the property and C zoning on the other part of the property. The R4 zone, contrary to the statement that was made, will have a park that will not be above the street level. It will be at street level. The parking garage will be underground. That's the idea. So from the outside, they'll look like there's nothing there except a park. We looked at the comments that Mr. Perica submitted, and we all know and respect Mr. Perica. And I would just comment about this. He talks about 17 approvals that are deviations from the code, but a zone change, a general plan amendment, a site plan review, those aren't deviations from the code. Mr. Perica also mentioned there's a 500-foot radius that he said variances are limited to. the notice that goes out to the public. If you can't find a similar project within 500 feet, he says, that's not how the planning department has done that. That's not my experience. I checked with Bob Janovici. I called him up and asked him about that, quoting what Mr. Parika said. He said that wasn't how the city has done that, has limited the area where you look for a variance for comparable properties to 500 feet. With respect to parking, we've asked the advisory agency parking level was dealt with by the advisory agency and dealt with last week by the planning commission, where they upheld the advisory agency. I'm sorry. On the city side of things, we're asking for a reduction in residential parking, and as we've presented to you, that amounts to approximately a 19% reduction in the amount of residential parking, which is permissible under the municipal code section 1232P, and we've asked you to take an action on that basis. It's the same parking that's been approved, but it happens to work out to be 19%. That section allows a change in parking in connection with a legislative action, such as a zone change, of up to 20%. So that's what we're asking for. We'd also ask, finally, that if you take an action in support of the project, that you adopt some supplemental CEQA findings, which were attached and submitted, because those were omitted in a prior action, dealing with the alternatives. And we've also submitted some supplemental zone change findings. If you approve the revised queue conditions and the minor change in parking, we've submitted some findings on those points. And we've prepared a list of action items that I think we've submitted already. With that, I'll sit down. Thank you.
Any questions from Mr. Woodward? No? Okay, I think we covered all our appeals. We got the two.
Yes, Council.
Okay. Now do we want the council deputies to step up? Come on up, please. We do.
Good afternoon, Chairman Reyes, Councilman Weezer. My name is Kelly Bernard with Council President Garrett Garcetti's office. So there are three appeals. We are, very quickly, we are here in support of the applicant's appeal regarding the signage issue. And the reason why we support the signage is because, as he mentioned, we have worked very closely with our Hollywood Design Review Committee, which has been long established for several years, and it was their recommendation, taking into consideration the Cadillac dealership. Well, most people know it by the old spaghetti factory, but it was the original Cadillac dealership. That facade, and just respecting that facade, they being the design review committee, thought that the signage would be better on Sunset as opposed to the western side of Gordon, which is what the commission approved. And so that speaks to the design or to the first appeal. In regards to the second and third appeal, we have heard the concerns raised throughout the various neighborhood council meetings we've had, the commission hearings, which it was, staff mentioned, it went to the commission twice. And while we appreciate and respect their concerns, we do support this project. It will have a public park, and CRA can speak to their agreements or their arrangement with the developer, but the public park was a huge benefit for this community and very important to our office. In addition to the creative office space, it was I think initially it was designed as just a housing with retail on the ground floor, and in Hollywood we were seeing a lack of office space, and so working with the developer, we looked into adding creative office space, and they were responsive to that. The community expressed their concern for additional open space, and so we do have a park which will be managed by a local nonprofit in conjunction with the neighborhood. It will not be managed by Rec and Park, so it will be accessible to everyone in the in the community. With regards to parking, we have worked very closely to increase the parking from what was originally proposed. This is a reduction not in the commercial parking but in the residential parking. The applicant back doing a CPC agreed to several mitigations of transit demand management program to address the concerns and parking. There will be flex cars on site. There will be biking to encourage people to the residents to bike. And there will be shared parking with the different uses that are going to be involved. So we think the project does adequately address the parking needs. So that was perking. And this is a union job. I think some of the representatives will be there, and they will work very closely with us for local hiring, which is very important to the councilman as well. And so overall, we think this is a very good project. It will provide some workforce housing, not as much as we'd like, but some workforce housing. And so we are appreciative of that as well. And it will be a LEED Gold. It came into the queue long before the Green Building Ordinance, but long before that it was a requirement. This developer agreed to meet those standards, and so it is my understanding that they will continue in conformance with the Green Building Ordinance to meet the gold standard.
Gotcha. Thank you, Ms. Meyer.
And if there are any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Well, just in terms of the facade of the spaghetti factory, I'm assuming there's limitations based on that objective in terms of how the structure could evolve and be built out given those constraints.
From the design review committee standpoint, it was really just not just of aesthetic, but really just complementing the facade and not overwhelming it with the way the sign was going to jut out on Gordon. And so they were the professionals or are the professionals, and so we just really relied on their input, and they felt strongly about it. I think one of the members have presented a letter. He could not be here today, but he did present a letter speaking to their concerns about the signage as well.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know I'm fighting time for quorum, so I'm going to limit the public hearing to 1 minute, and that way we can move along this committee. Allison Becker, did you still want to speak? Because, yes?
20 seconds.
No, we'll give you a minute and a half. How's that? I know the CRA here.
Yes, my name is Allison Becker, for the record. I'm the Associate Planner for the Hollywood Office of the Community Redevelopment Agency. I'd just like to take 1 minute, less than 1 minute, 50 seconds, to reiterate the Redevelopment Agency Board's strong support for this project. The board acted on this project in October. The City Council approved the financial deal in October, and we continue to work with the developer to finalize all the arrangements related to the public park, and hope that the land use entitlements can be finalized by the end of this month to allow the project to move forward as currently scheduled in September.
When you refer to public park, and you can hold your time, but I have a question on the public park side. Will the public park be accessible for folks who are also on the sidewalk and out of the structure itself? It's going to have, will you have that type of accessibility?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. We view this as one of the key public benefits of the project. It's going to be about a third of an acre, half an acre. It's going to be at street level, and actually, there's a piece.
So it's street level. It's not the second floor, as was stated by one of the speakers.
It's, you can literally walk into the park from the sidewalk. We're working with the Department of Rec and Parks. This is really what we hope to be a model for future collaboration between the Redevelopment Agency and the Department of Rec and Parks, where we partner to build public parks in urban neighborhoods. So we just finalized, I think, I want to say less than a month ago, our first public charrette, where we invited existing residents of the neighborhood to come and kind of talk to us about what their programmatic desires would be for a small infill park like this. And what we heard was very similar to what we might expect. People are hoping for a public park. It needs to be intergenerational. They'd like a place where adults could exercise, where children can play, that has a lot of mature trees, green space, and we'll continue to work with the community and the Department of Rec and Parks to deliver literally a public park to the community.
And this serve as a buffer to the residential uses that are near it?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Now, one of the public speakers mentioned that there are no Quimby fees being charged for this project. Is that correct?
The proposal, which will go before the Rec and Park Board of Commissioners, I want to say next week, is that the fees that are generated from this project be invested locally, literally, in this public park, which is part of their project. So it's not that the Quimby fees would go into a pot that would then be eligible for spending within whatever it is, a 2-mile radius, but rather that you're literally delivering a public park to the community right where the impact is occurring.
So that's where the $3.7 million figure came from, that it's, or what, because the speaker said that there's no Quimby fees charged, then in turn the CRA will purchase the park for $3.7 million. Can you explain that?
Sure. Very quickly, the financial deal on the park is that depending on what the actual Quimby fee winds up being, because the per unit fee continues to change, but we're looking at approximately a $2.4 million contribution in Quimby fees for a park which is going to cost approximately $5 million. So the redevelopment agency is going to support the construction and the acquisition of the airspace to produce the park, so that it's a total of a
And a park costs $5 million these days.
$5 million park.
Well, a pretty expensive park.
It is. This is Central Hollywood. $250 a square foot land costs, plus.
So, in other words, the Quimby fees will be reinvested back into the project, plus to make up for the gap in the final price of the park, the CRAs will put in several $1 million to complete the project.
Yes, the City Council authorized the redevelopment agent to spend up to $15 million on this project. And we'll be supporting the project in a variety of different ways, including supporting the public benefits that we're hoping to derive from it, including the public park and the creative office, which is approximately a $6 million investment for 40,000 square feet of space.
Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for your hard work. We have several speaker cards here. So to start, we have Tom Cody to come on up, then Shane Parker.
Good afternoon. Tom Cody, 550 South Hope Street, Los Angeles, the applicant. I just wanted to mention a couple of things briefly. I guess last to first with respect to the park. The park land itself, we purchased over a year and a half ago for $5.5 million. To give you an idea of the cost structure. So the way that this is organized is simply to provide public open space. So the land cost that Allison Becker mentioned is not the entire cost that we actually paid for the land, just a portion of that. The other thing that's important is that the maintenance of the park in perpetuity will be paid for by the Homeowners Association, including the 300 and some odd residential units combined with assessments made upon the commercial portions of the project as well. That is one of the groundbreaking aspects of this park concept, I think, that Ms. Becker mentioned when she mentioned using it as a model, a way to get the maintenance in perpetuity off the city's books. With respect to parking, the parking has been scrutinized at length. We actually came back to City Planning Commission a second time, increased the amount of parking, in large part because we have 3 on-site ride-sharing vehicles. They're covered, safe and secure ride-sharing vehicles. We are also providing 91 covered bicycle parking spaces on-site. And then, of course, you get a lot of sharing of parking stalls when you have commercial uses combined with residential uses. When the office people go home, the residential people come home. As part of the LEED Gold certification, we are required to provide those parking stalls.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We have Shamari Davis, and then we'll have Robbie Hunter.
Hi, I'm Shane Parker with Chris Joseph and Associates. We represented the CRA, the applicant, and city planning in preparing the EIR. I'm just here for questions if you have any, and would waive my time.
That's Shane Parker?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Shamari Davis and Robbie Hunter. Then Matthew Bray.
Good afternoon, Councilman Reyes.
Good afternoon.
And committee
My name is Shamari Davis. I'm a business agent with the IBEW Electricians Union. And a lot of what I do is outreach into the community to tell people about careers as an electrician. So what I see a lot is kids who have desire to get out of poverty and have an opportunity at these apprenticeships. So I believe that this Sunset and Gordon project will definitely help with giving opportunities to young adults who want to have good jobs, good middle-class jobs in construction. It's going to be all union, and that will provide a lifetime commitment to allowing them to have a good life. In particular, it's going to have a local hiring practice as volunteered by the developer. It allows us to recruit new workers to the surrounding neighborhoods, and I'm able to outreach to youth and adults. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your patience. Robbie Hunter, then Matthew Bray.
How you doing, Commissioners?
Good afternoon.
My name's Robbie Hunter. I'm the president of the Iron Workers Union, Local 433, at 254 Beverly Boulevard, City of Los Angeles. We work with a lot of developers in the city of LA and have done for 100 years. We've done a couple of projects with this developer, Gardner Adler, and we find that he really does look at the community and see what the issues are in that community and addresses them when he does a project. The type of projects that we have done with him is attracting people, policemen, teachers, people that work in the studios that are driving and commuting to far places, which we believe is the way of the future for the city of Los Angeles. We got to do things different. These guys are doing things different. They go green with their buildings. They do open spaces. They do community outreach. They want local contractors hired. They are probably one of the best developers we deal with, and we hope the city of LA will and the commission will support this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Matthew Bray, and then we'll have Catherine Kelly.
Hi, I'm Matthew Bray. I'm with GBD Architects, the architect for the developer Sunset and Gordon Investors. Relative to the parking issue, the City Planning Commission had recommended the parking demand be such that one parking stall per bedroom be required, and the project from that point forward has been redesigned to accommodate for that. So we have adequately met the parking demand as required and met by the city planning. Otherwise, I am simply here to provide additional information relative to design and or technical input.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay. Catherine Kelly and Alfred A. Hernandez.
Hi, I'm Catherine Kelly from 1463 Tamarind Avenue, and I'm speaking on behalf of Craig Donahue, who owns the company I work at, the Donahue Group. So just to briefly summarize the letter I submitted, I'm writing you as a business owner, landowner, and resident of Hollywood in support of the Sunset and Gordon project. I've invested significant time and dollars in making my property and neighborhood clean and safe and trying to develop a community of residents and businesses who care about this area. I urge you to deny Doug Haynes' appeal. To approve an appeal by two individuals who do not live or work in the immediate area will ultimately be harmful to our neighborhood, to the area's economy, and to the renaissance that is happening in Hollywood. Thank you.
Thank you. Alfred Hernandez. And then Ziggy Cruz.
Good afternoon, Councilman. Alfredo Hernandez with the LA Neighborhood Land Trust, 315 West 9th Street. The park aspect of this project will be street level, will be on the ground, will not be 2 levels up. And it will be run, as Kelly Bernard said earlier, by a nonprofit, which will be us. We have several parks throughout LA, and what our mission is to bring green space and parks to local neighborhoods that do not have that. And this neighborhood does not have a park. This neighborhood is nowhere near a park, in fact. And recent study, which we developed, shows that for every 1,000 people in the Latino community, 0.6 acres of green land. And this park is a half an acre and will do exactly that. And it is desperately needed in this community because it is mostly Latino. On June 26th, we held a community meeting inviting the entire community to come out and show their desires for what they wanted in this park, and they did exactly that, which included neighborhood people, business owners, and children.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Thank you for your patience. Ziggy Cruz, and then we'll have Rochelle Silsby.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Ziggy Cruz. I am a board member of the Hollywood Studio District Neighborhood Council, and I'm here on its behalf today. The HSDNC board voted on September 11, 2007 to support the project with subject to the developer bringing up the parking to the required and applicable city code. That the developer is now reaching for the variances sort of means that the HSDNC is not really in support of this project. Also, we have a couple of I have a list here of petitioners that are opposing the variances with the parking. These were collected in our neighborhood that are right around the corner of the project. And at this point, I just would like to express that the board had received a letter that was addressed by it came from Council District 13, addressed to one of our board members, in which he supported a decision made by our board in a different project, and we're expecting that the council decision and maybe hopefully your decision will based on that and support our decision at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Rochelle Silsby from the mayor's office.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Rochelle Silsby. I'm here today on behalf of the Office of Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. I'm here today in support of the project, again, echoing the statements of Councilman Garcetti's office. We're very supportive of this project. We're in favor of the first appeal that's on behalf of the applicant of the project and against the second two appeals. We feel that this project is really a sophisticated project with a lot of community benefits that have been really well thought through by the developer, and overall we think this is a great project and a significant achievement for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have Brent Gulke, I believe, or Gulk, I apologize, and Philip Lance. And then we'll have Milano Kay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brent Galke with Sunset and Gordon Investors, 550 South Hope Street, Suite 2640. I'm simply here to answer any technical questions.
Okay, thank you. That's the shortest speech yet. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Philip Lance, 1523 Gordon Street, and I'm representing 12 homeowners that live on Gordon Street across the street, and I'm authorized today to speak on their behalf in favor of this project. This is one of the best developers around town right now, and I do nonprofit community development work myself, so I really appreciate thoughtful projects, really wide sidewalks, something that hasn't been mentioned here that's a big benefit, plus the park. When I moved into this neighborhood a year and a half ago, I got rid of my car because I found out I was so close to so many different kinds of rapid transit. And I think more people are doing that all the time. It's a myth that you have to have a car to live in Los Angeles. This is becoming one of the best walkable neighborhoods in the city. And my 2 parking spots that go with my unit are sitting empty right now. And maybe I can rent them to somebody across the street if they want them.
I think they heard you. All right. Okay, nice vote. Okay, Milano Kay and Lupe Perez.
Hello. My name is Milano Kay. I live at 6869 Los Altos Place in Hollywood Heights. And I'm here to basically I'm addressing my attention to the super graphic billboard consideration on the west facade of the Hollywood and Vine Street building. And I'm asking, the committee, I want to find out what it is we are going to benefit as a community from such an adventure of reducing a standard for a reason that at one point seemed important enough to maintain and to write it down. Why are we lowering that standard? What is coming back to our community is my concern. I know that might be an unusual position, but I know advertising has had quite a bit of run on our community and has not been kept too much in check. Evidenced by the nip and tuck billboards that have been permitted in the Hollywood and Highland Plaza complex and also on Sunset Boulevard, which are offensive to many people. So there's a lot of issues related to billboard advertising that should be addressed, and I'm asking you, as I finish up here on the time lot, I'm asking you to tell me what kind of benefits we can expect as a community from this experiment in lessening a standard.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Lupe Perez?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You want me to respond to
Yes,
you?
I do, yes. What are the benefits that are coming to us?
Why don't you speak to your council office? We've been talking about the parks, the housing, and
parks are
preservation of graphics, but this is not a discussion. This is your presentation, and
Well,
thank you.
if you don't want to respond, that's
sir.
fine. I'm not saying you have to. No, pardon me. I'm not saying you have to. I'm asking for a discussion. If there is none, that's all right. I'm presenting the idea that there's some trading...
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, what you
We
say?
have more speakers. Thank you very much.
You were stopping me here.
Thank you.
I have a printed sheet on it. Does anyone like it, maybe, for a discussion?
Thank you, sir. Okay, Lupe Perez, Arna Voldanas.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Lupe Perez, and I work for Piping Industry Progress and Education Trust Fund. And I'm here to support this project because it will be built with 100% labor workers and companies. And these companies that will provide high-skilled jobs that can create middle-class opportunities for people who are underemployed or underserved. I consider this to be an investment to not only our industry, but also to the city because, as I stated again, it creates middle-class jobs. And so I ask for you to support the companies on this project that can provide the community with very good middle-class jobs. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Kevin Norton, then Albert T. Garcia, Jr.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Kevin Norton. I'm the Assistant Business Manager with IBW Local 11. We represent 8,000 electricians in LA County. I'm here to support this development project. I believe Sunset Gordon's a leading model of socially responsible real estate development. As a construction unit that's been at the forefront of environmentally friendly construction, we're excited to target LEED Gold standard on the project. IBW 11 is a strong advocate in the construction industry for greater utilization of solar panels and development projects to both conserve energy and decrease environmental pollution. The fact the developer, Girding Eland, is pursuing such a high level of green construction should be applauded, especially during this time of economic downturn. In closing, I'd ask your support for this project and ask you to keep this project moving forward. And I'm saying that because I had a 1-minute timeline. I have 15 seconds left. And I just want to say that my presentation is LEED Gold standards, but I would argue that Girding Eland is the gold standard of developers in Los Angeles and would appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Did really good for 1 minute. Please.
Hi, I'm Arna Vodanis. I'm the owner, and I'm right next door to this project. I'm extremely excited about it. I give 100% support. I've spoken with my tenants. I have 20 units. They are thrilled with the fact they're going to have access directly to the park. And my experience with this developer has been fantastic. They're very sensitive, and I'm very excited to continue working with them. It's been a total pleasure. Very conscious developer.
Can I have your name again?
Arna Vodanis.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Doug Haynes and Robert Smith, please come on up.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Albert T. Garcia, Jr. I'm Vice President of Reinforcing Ironworkers Local 416. We represent several thousand reinforcing ironworkers in Los Angeles. We support this development project. We are pleased by the fact that this project will be built with 100% union labor. We need your help in making sure that this project moves forward. Your support will allow us to save several hundred union jobs attached to this project. Please do not allow a handful of people who believe that the city of Los Angeles should not grow as a metropolitan city. Simply, these people who are appealing this project are ideologically anti-development. So please do not be held hostage to their anti-development ideology. In closing, I ask for your support for this project and the union workers who are waiting anxiously to build this world-class project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking the time. Okay, Robert Smith and Doug Haynes. Sorry.
Good afternoon, Councilman, and not too many people said hi to the ladies here, too, and the women and gentlemen here. Robert Smith, 7503 Aqueduct Street, Van Nuys, California. I represent painters and allied trades, over 10,000 folks here in Los Angeles. And my issue coming is, I'm a big low-income housing advocate, and we see not enough workforce housing. With my membership, you become a journeyman, and you're making too much for low-income become low-income housing, and you don't make enough for market rate housing. This actually opens up a lot of opportunities for men and women as they graduate apprenticeship programs to become homeowners. That's our dream, is educate our kids, have good jobs and housing, some place to lay down at night and raise your family safe and secure. And this is a good project. And this is a market, when you hear people talking about tough markets, this is a tough market, and someone going to do some development into workforce housing, that's incredible. I mean, because there's a lot of people that are being left out. Right. Thank you, and I ask you to support this project.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your patience. Now, Mr. Haynes, apologize.
Thank you very much. Doug Haynes for the La Mirada Avenue Neighborhood Association. Planning staff said that this is a complex project and we need to look at the end product. There's nothing complex about this. This is complete disregard for the zoning code. This is the most number of discretionary entitlement requests ever in the history of the city of Los Angeles. There are many factors about this project that have been promoted: the park, the workforce housing, the commercial land, but we're paying for all that. The park is being paid for us, the commercial component is being paid for us through the CRA, $6 million. The workforce housing is being funded by us, the taxpayers, at $60,000 a unit, $90,000 a unit for the 60 units. So we're paying for all these benefits. And Councilman Huizar, the park that everyone is lauding so much, if you'll recall, Helen Birdstein High School will be opening this fall, which you were on the board when that was approved. That's over 6 acres of athletic fields. That's 2 blocks away. That's truly something that's community-based. This park will be controlled by the Homeowners Association, not by the city at large, but the Homeowners Association. So let's make sure we're straight on that. And if we need a park, let's put it in. The money's already being funded by us, the taxpayers, so let's use that money for this park instead of a giveaway to this developer to satisfy his open space requirements. When we talk about the preservation, next to this lot is a 2-story parking lot, 2-acre parking lot. They could have purchased that land instead of developing over the spaghetti factory site, and it wouldn't have affected the preservation, but they didn't do so. Instead, they chose this lot. So the argument that you have to overbuild this area and underpark it, twice the residential density and half the parking almost, is not true. They could have chosen a different site immediately adjacent to this. I guess our point is in all this is that where we go from here as a community, this will set precedent for citywide development. It will be a catalyst for ignoring the municipal code. And Chair Reyes, you worked for 20 years with the planning department. Is that what we really want, to completely throw out the municipal code and let developers rewrite it? Because that's what this project will achieve. And as a community, not only under siege with the lack of parking, but we see development coming through that doesn't pay any attention to the code, and that's why we're appealing this. And that's why we'll be forced as a community to go to court to litigate this project based on the fact there's no support whatsoever for any of these variances. It's strictly feel-good assumptions about what will be the benefits, and none of them are true. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. And just to respond to your alluding to my 20 years experience, what I do know is that many community plans need to be updated, they need to be changed. And as we go through that process, we need to wrestle with these cases as they come forward and look at the overall community as a benefit. So in response to your assertion, yes, for 20 years I've been doing this, but also for 20 years we've been needing change to address the needs of all the communities throughout the city.
And
thank you, Mr. Haynes.
I was respectfully comment that
thank you, sir.
Current zoning is the law, and we wish to uphold it.
Thank you very much. We have Mark Griff, Terry Martin, and George Abu Daud.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Girth with the Painters and Allied Trades Union and 2333 North Lake Avenue in Altadena. And we've been a leader in advocating for green technology and green construction skills in our industry. And I'm here today to express our full support for this development. We believe that the project is a leading model of socially and environmentally responsible real estate development, and given the community benefits involved in this project, the request for the increase in FAR parking variance of 1.28, zone change, sign usage, and height variance should be supported. Aside from the fact that my organization is pleased by the fact that this project will be built with 100% union labor, we are impressed by the high level of environmental standards incorporated into the project. In particular, this project takes into consideration transit-oriented development principles and utilizes a flex car system. In addition, the unit sizes of this project tend to be smaller, and there's a growing need for public transportation usage in the Hollywood area. In closing, we ask for your support, and we thank you very much.
Thank you again. Thank you for your patience. Terry Martin, George Abu Daud, and Nicole Shanian.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Terry Martin, representative and political liaison for UA Local 250. When this project is approved, our members will be doing the heating, comfort heating and cooling, as well as we have 3 other locals in the area that have the plumbing. The sprinkler fitters would be doing the fire sprinklers for safety, and we have the landscape and irrigation local that would be doing the sprinklers for the park and any landscape. I represent over 4,700 members, so when projects come up, we're here to support those that are in regards to the community, the environment, the safety of both. We support. It's not often we get developers that come in and right off the bat say, hey, listen, we understand in order to build a project, we have to have skilled and trained craftspersons. Is my 1 minute up?
Yeah.
I crossed out on almost everything on this. Can I have 30 more seconds?
Do you want to conclude?
Okay. Union construction jobs are one of very few paths left that allow disadvantaged youths and young adults to begin a career that can allow them to join the ranks of the middle class. I myself come out of the Job Corps in 1972 with a GED, and I came into Local 250. 25 years later, working with the tools, I was elected business agent for the last 10 years. So I can thank the Job Corps.
Thank you, Mr.
And I can thank the union. For many, the apprenticeship program provides, for the first time in their life, a living wage. Living wage today, we'll say it's 4 gallons of gas an hour, $16. Health benefits, job security, marketable skills, and a pension to retire on. Sunset Gordon Project will contribute to this effort to alleviate poverty and underemployment of our city's youth. As you know, the economy is in dire straits. We see development projects being abandoned due to the economic downturn.
Mr. Martin, I really need for you to finish.
5 seconds. We need your help in making sure that our members and local youth have an opportunity to enjoy a middle-class livelihood in the city of LA. Please support this project with lots of community benefits so we don't lose another good development project due to delays and frivolous appeals. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. George Abu Daud, Nicole Shanian, I believe. I apologize. And Nyla Arslanian. Sir.
I go by George. Good afternoon. I won't speak to the variances and the code changes everyone's speaking of. It's, I think we're all aware in this room that we live in an urban core and in the second largest metropolis in the country. I won't get into that. But I purchased 2 years ago the 50% vacant property across the street from this site. It was vacant since 1997. I opened a restaurant 2 months ago, and I will be opening up more retail spots in that same building over the course of the next 3 months. Spaghetti Factory sits vacant across the street. The actual restaurant wasn't doing well when it was open. This entire stretch of Sunset Boulevard is horrible. I'm the only guy who's protecting that area with the police. I really dislike when somebody comes in here and says, us neighbors, us people, this is this submarket of Hollywood, Sunset Vine, Hollywood Vine, Freeway to Highland, is not La Mirada. This is a completely different area. It's where I live, 3 blocks away from the site. I have the building across the street. I have another business 3 blocks away, and my office is across the street. I'm the youngest director on the chamber board, Sunset and Bid Board, Security Committee, Streetscape Committee, and I came here to support this project for everybody's safety in the area. And you're not going to get a developer like this, anytime soon. So when the opportunity comes, take it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, our last 2 speakers.
Good afternoon. I'm Nicole Shahanian, Vice President of Public Policy at the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Hollywood Chamber, which represents over 1,000 businesses in the Hollywood area, I'm here to speak in support of this project. The proposed development represents a creative model of mixed-use design, which will bring much-needed affordable workforce housing into the Hollywood community. Specifically, I wanted to address some of the parking concerns that have been mentioned here today. The Chamber strongly believes that because of the mixed-use nature of this development, that adequate parking has already been provided for with the over 500 spaces that are included in the development plan. We believe that these spaces can be shared. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Naila Arslanian? I apologize for butchering the last name.
A name like Naila Arslanian.
Okay.
If the letters are somewhere there, I answer to it.
Pretty close.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you very much for being able to appear before you to endorse and support the Sunset Gordon project. My name is Naila Arslanian. I'm president of the Hollywood Arts Council and 25-year business member on Sunset Boulevard. We're very pleased to support this project and welcome to Hollywood the quality developer of Girding Edlin. They're bringing an innovative and green design to, as Mr. Abode spoke about, a sad part of our world-famous Sunset Boulevard. They are bringing a contribution to the Hollywood community in this wonderful park. I did participate with the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust in their initial meeting, and the Hollywood Arts Council looks forward to further working with the developer, the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust, and the artists that are being brought on to the project to bring art to this beautiful park, and the Arts Council will continue with helping with their programming. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, I think that covers all the speaker cards for this item. Do you have any questions from our staff or for our staff? No? Okay, we know this is a very complex project, and I understand the consternation as to the range of exceptions and conditions, but I also know that the council office has worked diligently with the stakeholders in the area. They spent, it's not the first time this item comes to this committee. It's been sent back. They've worked on it. And it's obvious that the various stakeholders have played a role in trying to find a scenario that would allow for a facility that would be complementary and compatible given the buffering, the parking. Throughout the city of LA, we're always going to be challenged with parking and transportation. But I think being able to provide housing in the same facility as you have business and commercial is a trend that we have to wrestle with and figure out how to deal with those types of conveniences while we design these structures. So that being said, there's a range of actions we need to take. So I'll start with the signage, which is the first appeal. And that's to grant the appeal, if it's seconded, grant the appeal filed by Mark Elin and Kelly Sato, Sunset and Gordon Investors, LLC, from part of the decision of the City Planning Commission in denying an exception from the Hollywood Signage and Supplemental Use District to permit one super graphic sign to be located on the southern facade elevation and in approving a project permit compliance for two super graphic signs to be located on the eastern and western facade elevations. To adopt the attached findings in support of supplemental CEQA findings, which would be Exhibit A, the project permit compliance findings, which would be Exhibit D, and specific plan exception findings, Exhibit E. 3, deny the appeal filed by Doug Haynes and La Mirada Avenue Neighborhood Association of Hollywood from part of the decision of the CPC in approving all variances, zoning adjustments, conditional use permit approvals, site plan review, project permit compliance, and certification approval of the project's environmental impact report, erratum and addendum to the EIR, and adoption of the statement of overriding considerations. Then 4, deny the appeal filed by Robert Blue from part of the decision of the CPC in approving conditional use permit approvals, certain variances, zoning administrator's adjustment, site plan review, and project permit compliance. On agenda item 8B, the following actions would like to be recommended, which is to approve the general plan amendment to the Hollywood Community Plan from the highway-oriented commercial to the regional center commercial land use designation. 2, approve the zone change ordinances for a concurrent zone and height district change from C4-1-SN and a portion of the QR4-1BL zone to TQC2-2D-SN and a zone change to remove the Q condition from the QR4-1BL zone to permit a density of 400 square feet of lot area per unit in lieu of the current restriction of 600 square feet of lot area per unit, subject to conditions of approval. 3, approve the revised Q conditions regarding Q condition number 5, green building, by adding language to the best of its ability, and Q condition number 8, parking, by adding a reference to the revised development plans dated April 22nd, 2008, Exhibit B. 4, approve a minor change in residential parking requirements not to exceed 20% of code requirements pursuant to LAMC section 12.32P as in Paul. 5, adopt the findings of the Planning Commission and the additional zone change findings, Exhibit C. 6, certify that it has reviewed and considered the final environmental impact report, CRA-EIR, SCH number 2006111135, the October 10, 2007 erratum and February 29, 2008 addendum to the final EIR, and other evidence in the record regarding the environmental effects of the project, and adopt the environmental findings made by the City Planning Commission and the supplemental CEQA findings regarding alternative Exhibit A as its own findings, including the statement of overriding considerations. So those would be the actions for 8A and B. We have a second on that. That'll be the action of this committee, and we'll be seeing you in council. Thank you very much. Now, for public comment, I do have one card.
There's a
Mr.
card.
Wright, on cue. Mr. Wright, it's all yours.
Thank you. Daniel Wright, 467 Crane Boulevard. Whenever I'm here, I always use public comment to talk to you a little bit about the Southwest Museum issue, which is a whole series of entitlements that appear to be coming in your direction, including a vesting conditional use permit. A vesting conditional use permit on land owned by this city. It's going to be an interesting thing to look at because it implies the idea that this land might be given to the Autry in perpetuity. And that certainly would be inconsistent with the whole trust obligation that the city has with regard to its own city parkland and perhaps some of the trust obligations under the Griffith Park Family Trust. And while we're talking about fiduciary duties, I wanted to emphasize both to you council members that your office should have received the latest Mount Washington Homeowners Alliance newsletter, which included our analysis of the idea of what is a fiduciary duty and what is the theory as to why the Autry's proposal to move the entire Southwest Museum over to Griffith Park is a breach of their fiduciary duties as trustees of these assets. By taking possession of the Southwest Museum assets, the Autry didn't just hand these assets over to them and say, you can do whatever you want. The merger agreement sets forth the trust obligation. These assets were entrusted with donor restrictions. And the donor here was the Southwest Museum Board. And they said, you may have these assets, Autry, but you must preserve the independent identity and integrity of the Southwest Museum. And you have to ask yourself whether or not moving the Southwest Museum into a gallery in a single building over in Griffith Park and calling it the Autry National Center is complying with those solemn fiduciary duties under state law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing no one else, this meeting is adjourned.